Once students move on to 2 to 3 letter consonant spellings, the procedure for introduction will be the same as it was in the earlier lessons. We'll start with speech. So we'll point out the picture and name the picture and use it in context. So today we're going to learn how to spell the sh sound in words. So this is a picture of a ship. I use the ship to float across the sea. So we want to use the word, maybe use it in a couple of different sentences, give it some context. And then we're going to segment ship into its sounds. Now, depending on the student's level of proficiency with segmentation, there are 2 ways you might go about this. The student might be at the point where he or she can simply point and do sh, I, p, and that's it, all on their own. Now, if a child is still having trouble segmenting, you can always do it first and then have them do it. So you could say something like, watch me say the sounds in ship. Sh, I, p. Now you try, and then the child would repeat it. Sh, I, p. Okay? Now we're going to look at how to spell ship. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to use these letters, and this will spell the sh sound. Now, again, you could model this first if you wanted to do it on a whiteboard or trace it over with a pencil and then let the student copy you and trace it over. At this point, I find most students are able to really do the segmenting on their own and then go right into writing it on their own. So let's say the sounds in ship while we write the letters. Sh, I, p, ship. Okay, now we'll notice, and you want to point this out and remember anything kind of instructionally that you want to point out to the student is going to be in this box up at the top. So you want to point out, oh, look at how we're spelling the sh sound in ship. We're using 2 letters, but it's only 1 sound. So let's read back that word, ship. Now let's say and write ship without any spaces. Sh, I, p, and let's read it back, ship. So we're always blending back what we wrote after we've read it. So the process is going to be the same for introducing the sound. Now, one thing that's a little bit different is you're only going to have 2 examples. Where in the earlier levels, there were 3 examples. So now our second example for the sh sound is the word crash. So I see that the cars had a crash. So again, at this point, most students can segment the sounds. Again, if they need to have you model it first, you can. But if they're able to do that segmenting, have them go right into the segmenting. So go ahead and say the sounds in crash. K, r, a, sh. Crash. So we've now tapped the sounds and segmented. Now let's see how we spell crash. Now say and write crash. K, r, a, sh. And let's read it back. Crash. And we always want to make sure too that we're providing any kind of corrective feedback in terms of handwriting. So if you see the students are starting at the wrong place, and I see this especially with the letters A or D or B, make sure you correct them because we don't want kids practicing incorrectly. Now we're going to go ahead and say and write crash again with no spaces. K, r, a, sh, and read it back. Crash. Okay, so that's our sound introduction. Next, we're going to move on to the bottom of the page where the students are going to be reading and mapping. After introducing the new sound spelling through the word building activity, now it's time to do a little bit of practicing with a phoneme grapheme mapping activity. And what that means is we're going to be associating the sound with the symbol. That's what that phoneme, meaning the sound, to the grapheme, meaning that written symbol, having that connection between the 2. And this is a great activity because you're going to be reading, segmenting, and spelling and working on that letter formation all in one activity. So the student will begin by reading the first word, and we want to continue again that continuous blending. Encourage the student to blend one sound into the next, like this. Shop versus sh, up, shop. So we want to segment when we're spelling, but when we're reading, we want to blend those sounds together and keep that airflow moving. So it would look something like this. Shop, shop. And then we put it in context. I'm going to shop at the store. So the student will read the word, say, and dot. So when they say and dot, they're segmenting the word into the sounds. And so what this looks like is saying the sounds, sh, ah, p. Why at the same time, putting a dot in the box. Now, when you first do this with students, you'll have introduced this at the earlier level. And so at that point, you might be doing the dotting, but at this point, they've been doing this for a while. So this is not anything new for them. After they say and dot, now they're going to say and write. Sh, ah, p, and then read it back. Shop. And it's important to remember that SH is a 2-letter spelling for sh. So those 2 letters go in one box because it is one sound. Again, these are sound boxes. So it's one sound per box. Then the student writes it again. Sh, ah, p, reads it back. Shop. Okay? So we read it, we say and dot, say and write, read it, say and write, read it. I'll do one more example. And again, the directions are written in the workbook for you if you need to have them beside you. But here it is again. Dish. I put my fish on the dish to eat it. Sh. Now we say and write. Sh. And we read it back. Dish. Now we say and write again. Sh. And read it back. Dish. And again, anytime the students are writing, we want to make sure we give them any kind of corrective feedback. We want to make sure those letters are being formed correctly every single time. If something's not being formed correctly, we want to show the student how to do it and correct it on the spot. Okay, so that would complete the introductory activity of building the words and then mapping the new words that have that sound spelling that is the newest that's introduced in the lesson. Some lessons at this level will focus on what we call inflectional suffixes. Now, these are the most common suffixes. They are added to the end of a word and they have meaning. So for instance, when we're adding an S, it makes a word mean more than one. And it can sound like a S as in cats, or it can sound like a Z as in dogs. And we're going to introduce this the same way we introduce everything else, by starting with a meaningful word and taking that word, taking those sounds, segmenting the word into the sounds, and then turning those sounds into letters. So we'll begin with some pictures. This shows a picture of cats. There are 2 cats. So we want to put it into context for the student. And then ask the student to take the word cats and tap the sound. So we're going to say it, cats, tap it, k, a, t, s, and then we're going to map it. So we're going to take those sounds, we're going to turn them into letters. And this is the same as what they would do with anything, any kind of letter that they're learning to spell or sound spelling that's introduced. K, a, t, s. Read it back, cats. So first we're just taking the word and we're writing it. We're not really explaining what it means yet. First we want to put it into context and then have the student copy and write it. K, a, t, s. And you want to bring the student's attention to the sound. What are we hearing at the end? Cats. So it's that regular sound that we've already learned. But let's listen to when we use the word dogs. So I see 4 dogs in the picture. So let's tap it. D-A-G-Z. So in dogs, we're hearing a Z sound. Now let's map it. D-A-G-Z. And let's read it back. Dogs. And now let's go ahead and say and write again. D-A-G-Z. Dogs. And you can explain to the kids that when we want to show more than one of something, like here we have 2 cats and here we have 4 dogs, we can add the letter S, and that's a suffix. We can also take those suffixes off to turn it back into one. So suffixes can be added to words, they can be taken off of words. And we want to point out that depending on what the base word is, it's S or it's Z. Now, just for the instructor's purpose, the reason we have two different sounds is it depends on the final sound in the base word. So when we hear the t sound, our voice does not buzz. So that means our voice won't buzz when we say that s sound. But at the end of dog, if you feel your throat will buzz. G. It's a voiced sound. G. So the suffix will also be voiced. Z. Now, this is not information the child needs to know. They just need to be aware of the sound and know that even though we hear a Z, we're going to write an S because S is a suffix. And that's how we spell when we're adding more than one. Now, the thing that will look different about the suffixes at the bottom of the page, the students won't be doing a mapping activity. Instead, they'll be doing a word sum. And basically what that means is we've taken the word broken it up into the base word, which is the word without the suffix. And then we have the suffix in bold. So the child will read the base word, bat, add the suffix s, put it together, bats, and then say and write b-a-t-s, bats. Log, z, logs, l-a-g-z. Bug, z, bugs, b-a-g-z, bugs. Pin, z, pins, p-i-n-z, pins. Now, if you find the child, for instance, in a word like bug or pins, if you find they're saying bug and then saying s, bug, s, you can say to them, is that how we would say it? If I see 3, how would we say that? 3 bugs. I see 3 bugs. So you want to put it in context for them sometimes just to make sure that they're really understanding that this letter S, it's not just representing the sound, but it is representing the meaning. So when I see that S at the end of bugs, it's telling me there's more than one bug. So that's going to be a little bit different for the suffixes than for the other different sound spellings that were being introduced. We're going to do our word building, and then we're going to do our sums at the end. Now we have the sound swap activity again, and the students have already been doing this with letter tiles or with those little plastic tiles. You can get them on Amazon or really anywhere, or you can write them on sticky notes if you'd rather. But once kids get to this stage, I want to just show you another way you can do it. So at this point, the students have already learned all of their letters, so they're able to do that handwriting a little bit more quickly. Now, what you'll want is your sound box. You can print out the sound box's mat. Again, anything in the appendix can be photocopied. You're going to put it in a sheet protector, and then you're going to need an Expo marker, some sort of dry erase marker, and an eraser. Now you're going to find this at the bottom of the phoneme grapheme mapping page. Okay, so you're going to be reading that just like you did with the earlier lessons. You'll read it to the students, and they'll change one sound in one spelling to make a new word. So now we start with writing in the first word. And like I said, I like to sit across from the student, so I'm usually sitting across from them and I'm pointing up to the numbers, and the child can be using their finger to look at the sounds down here to see what's changing. So the child would read the word click, and then I would say, of course I'm on the other side, I would say change click to clack. And I'm going to really drag it out. And then I'm going to encourage them to say the word they want to make. So if we have click and we want clack, I want the child to touch and say k-l-ah. Oh, that's what's going to change. So that is what helps the child figure out what's changing. Have them touch and say the sounds. We have clack. We want clash. Clash. And then the student is going to change it. And it's harder because the child has to recall the spellings. Again, if you want to keep using tiles, you can do that, but this is just a little bit easier to do. Easier in terms of management. We just pull it out and you do it instead of having to take out the tiles. And most kids can handle it, but again, decide based on the child you're working with. Change clash to crash, and then the student will tap. Okay, and they have crash. Change crash to crush. Crush. Change crush to brush. Change brush to rush. Now in that one, we're dropping a sound. So now we have rush. Change rush to rash. And the student taps. Okay, so now we have rash. Change rash to mash. And the student taps. Oh, that's what's changing. Okay, and we have mash. Now we're going to change mash to smash. Now that we're adding a sound. And the student reads it, smash. Okay, so that's how the sound swap game looks when you're using your sound boxes in a sheet protector with a dry erase marker. Next, we have a phoneme-grapheme mapping activity. And what that means, again, we did this at the earlier levels, is that we're going to connect the spellings with the sounds. So the first thing we'll have the students do is do a quick warm-up. They're going to trace the letters and say the sounds. Just to point out, we have these little dashes because these are spellings that typically come at the end of the word. And at this point, we're only reading one syllable words. So this would be the l spelling at the end and the k spelling at the end. So the student's going to trace and say sh, I, o, k. And that's just a quick retrieval practice to get them warmed up and thinking about the sounds that will be used in this list. So I'll just do a couple of examples. So we're going to begin by blending the sounds, and we want to practice that continuous blending. You might have to do some modeling. Ship, ship. Now, depending on the child, if this is a student that really still needs that segmenting practice, you can have them dot, sh, I, p, and then have them write sh, I, p, and read it back, ship. Okay, I'll just do another few examples. Shop, shop. I'm going to shop at the store. Sh, p, say and write. Sh, p, read it back, shop. Fish. I like to fish in the ocean. Fish, say and write. Fish, and read it back. Fish. Okay, so we read it, we say and dot, and then we say and write, and we read it back. Okay, so this child will go ahead and do that for all of these. And then what I would recommend as well, when you're done doing the whole mapping page, you can ask the student to read up and down to practice building that automaticity. So they can repeat this. And this is also an activity if you're, say, working at home with your child and you're trying to do one lesson a week. This is an activity you could reuse this list and just have your child write on a whiteboard. So even though we only have one page of these phoneme-grapheme mapping activities, this is an activity that can be repeated, and the child can repeatedly read the list and then just write the spellings on a separate board. So once they're done with this, then you're going to have them do the bottom. And they're going to highlight words with the target spelling. So whatever that target spelling was, that's always listed first at the top. So today we're working on that SH spelling of the sh sound, two-letter spelling. So the child will kind of read in their head first, find those letters. I always encourage the kids to kind of read it in their head first, to give them a minute to think about what the sentence says, highlight the target spelling, then read it out loud. The bad rash was on Will's shin. And you might have to explain what a shin is. Many times kids have heard of the word shin and the word shin guard, but they don't really know what a shin actually is. So always be mindful of opportunities to talk about vocabulary. And again, the high frequency words that have uncommon spellings are going to be underlined. But we're really only going to underline the ones that are newer. So if it's, for instance, the is not underlined here because the kids have been working on that one since the very beginning. So you'll see that not all of them are going to be underlined, just the ones that are newer. Okay, so that's what you're going to do for the reading the sentences, you're going to highlight the target spellings, have the child read the sentences aloud. Next, we have the phonemic awareness activities, and you'll see them in the back in the appendix where it says phonemic awareness tasks 8 through 25, and it tells you the lesson. So if I'm on lesson 9, these are the words I'm using. If I'm on, lesson 8, these are the words I'm using. Now, this is just for the instructor to see. The kids don't see this page. What the kids will see is this. So you're going to have the sound boxes mat, and you can print this or copy it from the appendix, put it in a sheet protector, and then you'll want to have some sort of manipulative. So I have little tokens here. If you don't have tokens, you can use pennies or some sort of coin or Lego pieces. You can use anything to manipulate. Now, the reason we're doing this activity is we want to give that kind of workout with the brain of holding on to sounds and giving those sounds back, doing some sort of a manipulation. So this is going to help build their phonemic proficiency. Earlier we did the sound swap, which was also working on phonemic awareness, but with the letters. So this is a more difficult task that the student will have to do. So I'm going to do an example where the child is going to be segmenting the words. So we're always going to start by asking them to segment. So if it says on my list, if it says, and I'll show you what this looks like. If you see, say spit without spit. Before I ask them to do that, I'm just going to ask them to segment spit. So I'll say, show me the sounds in spit. Sp, it. Great, we have spit. Now what's spit without sp, it, pit? Now if the child says, if I say, show me the sounds in spit, and they go sp, and they do that as one sound, if they do sp, whoops, sp, it, spit, I'd say, actually, this is two sounds. Watch me do it first. Sp, it, spit. Now you try it, and then you just have them echo you and copy it. Okay, so for a lot of kids, that's really hard to hear that there's two separate sounds. S and P are two sounds and not one. So just model it. You don't need to make them, try it over and over. Just simply model it. They copy it. So then we would move on to the next one. Say spot. Show me the sounds. Spot. Now what's spot without spot? Pot. Okay. Show me the sounds in flip. 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 What's flip without flip? Flip. Show me the sounds in skin. Sk, in, skin. Now what's skin without sk, in, kin? Now the next one is going to be harder because I'm going to ask them to take away the second sound instead. Show me the sounds in plan. P-l-a-n, plan. What's plan without ul? P-an, pan. Now that's a harder one to do because now I'm taking away the second sound. So you can see how this can become really challenging. Now again, these can be repeated. You can choose other words if you want to do some additional practice with this, but I would recommend just doing at least the ones that are included in the book. It's just great practice to help build that phonemic proficiency. Next, the child is going to practice spelling words with the new sound and then also with some previously learned spellings as well. Now, you'll see target spellings here, words here, and then sentences down here. Now, it's up to you how you'd like to handle the target spellings. I'll show you kind of the easier way and then the harder way. So I'm going to do an example with lesson 20 here. You'll see the target spellings are here, and then these are the words you're going to dictate. The suffixes are in bold, just for your knowledge, because when we do the suffixes, it is a little bit different. I'll show you how to do that. Now, you can simply write the spellings up at the top if you'd like to do that, or you can dictate it to the student. Now, that's a little bit harder to do. For instance, if I wanted to have the child write the TCH spelling of the ch, I would have to say to the student, what's the three-letter spelling for ch that comes at the end? and then the child would write it like this. Ch. Or if I were saying, with the TH, say the th or th sound, how would I spell that? And then the child would say it th or th, and then write it down, okay? So you're just gonna wanna have either you're dictating it, or like I said, the easier thing to do is if you wanna just go ahead and list the spellings up at the top, and you can say to the student, these are some of the spellings that we're going to be using. Let's read them. Ch, th, k, I, right? So that's really up to you how you would like to do it, what you think will work with the student you have. Then you're going to dictate, so here we are, list 20, the first word. And I'm going to show you, here we go. The first word is sting. Now, again, the child doesn't see this. This is for you. So what you might want to do is just take a picture with your phone so you have the words in front of you, or you can make a photocopy of this page. Anything in the appendix can be photocopied. So you could also photocopy it and you have it, because the child will be writing in their workbook. So you'll want to have these words handy to look at. So the first thing you'll want the child to do is say the word sting, and then segment the sounds. And I always like to use the words in the context of a sentence, an oral sentence. So I might say, I got a bad sting from a bee. And then the student is going to say the sounds using their fingers. S, t, I, okay? So they can either use their fingers to spell, or if you want to have the sound box mat handy, you could have them tap it, s, t, I, or have them use tokens to segment. But you want them to segment first before they then say and write. S, t, I, and then read it back. Sting. Okay, so that's what you're going to give it to them in context, have them segment it, and then have them say and write the sounds. So that's what you'll do for all of the words. The only thing that's a little different is when there is a suffix. When there's a suffix, I'm going to show you an example of the word pitched. You always want to ask them to tell you what the base word is. So if I said to the student, we're going to spell the word pitched, as in I pitched the ball. What's the base word in pitched? In other words, what's the word without the suffix? If I take away that sound, what am I left with? I'm left with the word pitch. Like I will pitch the ball, I pitched the ball. All right, so first we're going to spell the base word pitch. P-itch, p-itch. And again, look up here if they forget how to spell it. Always encourage them to use the spellings at the top. Now that I would say to the student, okay, now how do we turn pitch into pitched? What's the suffix we need to add? So this will help the student be mindful that we hear a t, but we're writing ed, because ed is the suffix. That's how we spell pitched. Okay, so when you're dictating a word with a suffix, it's a little different. Then you're going to choose any sentence you want to have the child write. Now, if I go back and I look at the lesson, so it's like that was lesson 20. Let's see. So we have, okay, so here's the lesson. You can see we could choose some sentences at the bottom. We can pick a sentence that's from the story. We can make up a sentence. It's really up to you. Maybe you want your child to practice a certain spelling. Maybe they've been really working on the word was for spelling, and you want them to practice spelling that. It's really up to you. But you're going to give them a sentence, have them repeat it, have them say it, and write it. So if, let's say, I asked the child to write, the witch was in the ditch. Repeat it. The child says, the witch was in the ditch. Now say and write, the witch was in the ditch. Okay, and then they're going to use cups, and you're going to guide them through. C stands for capitals. Did we start with a capital? We did. U stands for understanding. Touch and read each word. Does it make sense? The witch was in the ditch. Yep, the sentence makes sense. P for punctuation. Do I have end punctuation? I do, so I can check that off. And S for spelling. Check each word for correct spelling and fix errors. Now that they're really going to need your help with, but you're going to look one word at a time. The witch was, and was is one of those words. It's got a tricky part, so you're going to double check those. In the ditch. ditch, and I've got all of my correct spellings, so then we can check that off. Now, let's say a child misspelled a word. Then what you could do is show them the correct spelling and just let them copy it. So let's say the child wrote was with a U instead of an A. So then what you could do is just have them cross it off and just write it up here. And you could model it for them, show them how to write it. Was. Now you write it, was, and just give it to them to copy. Before the student begins reading the story, we're going to do a quick get ready to read activity, and this will really depend on the student in terms of how much time you spend on this. The idea is to preview up to 3 high-frequency words with uncommon spellings or any vocabulary you think the child would have difficulty with in the story. Now, for the most part, vocabulary can be discussed while you're reading it. So typically at this level, you would really want to focus on a word that's a high frequency word that you anticipate the child might have difficulty with. So just from looking at this, and you want to preview ahead of time, again, thinking about the student in front of you, I have a couple ideas of some words that I think the child might struggle with. One is the word from, because of the O has that sound instead of the sound, so that could be problematic. The word likes could be difficult as well. Likes is a regular word, but they haven't learned that pattern yet. So they might have some trouble with that word. So I would pick, again, 1, 2, or 3 words, so up to 3. I wouldn't do more than 3 because then it becomes too much for the student to do before reading the text. But you're just going to pick a few words and preview the word with the student. So I'm going to actually pick the word likes to preview. So I would say to the student, we're going to preview and practice a word that's in the story that might be a little bit challenging for you because you haven't learned this word yet or this spelling yet. You're going to begin by showing the word to the student. Now, this is an example of just a wipe-off mat that I have. You could do this on a whiteboard. You could do it on a piece of paper. You could do it on a sticky note. You really could do it on anything. You also could use your sound mat to do that if you wanted to use the sound mat. So there's different ways you can do this. But you first want to show the student what the word looks like. So here's the word. And I would say this is the word like. And actually it has an S at the end, so we could do likes. As in, she likes to ride her bike. Or she likes to, or he likes to eat ice cream. So we want to use it in context. Tell me the sounds you hear in likes. And I want the student to tell you the sounds. And as this child says the sounds, you can write sound lines. L, I, K, S, likes. Okay, now go ahead, say and write the word likes on the lines. L, I, K, and let's read it back. Likes. Okay, and now let's read it. Let's write it one more time. Likes. Okay, so you could easily do it on a mat like this, or if you prefer, you could use your sound boxes for this activity. If you don't want to draw sound lines, you'll have sound boxes. You could use those instead. So it's essentially what we're doing is we're doing a phoneme grapheme mapping task with the word. So here's how it would look in a sound box. L, I, K, S, likes. So if you already have your sound boxes, those are the easiest to use. If you don't have sound boxes, you could just draw one line for each sound. Please make sure it's one line per sound, not per letter. As you can see, KE is one sound. L, I, K, S. It's only 4 sounds in likes. Okay, so we just want to make sure of that. One way to avoid getting confused is you could use your sound boxes, but make sure you're always leading with speech. It's what's coming out of your mouth. How many sounds do you hear? And then you're going to map the sounds to those letters. Now it's time for the child to read a story that contains the new sound spelling that was introduced. Now for this, you'll need your story, and you'll also want a copy of your story grammar chart, which you can find in the appendix. You can see I put mine in a sheet protector. You'll want to either make a photocopy of that story grammar, which you can do. You can copy anything that's in the appendix, or you can just rip it out, put it in a sheet protector, because this is something you'll be using throughout the program. Now, just to kind of talk a little bit about what the story grammar is, it's a little chart that you can use to help you talk about the structure of a narrative story. So stories will have a setting, which include a place and a time. Time isn't always included, but there's always some sort of place. Characters, a problem or a wish, a feeling, so usually the character has some sort of feeling about the problem or wish. There might be an important action or actions that happen, and then also the resolution of what happens at the end of the story and the final feeling of how does that character feel. Now, there's not a whole lot happening in these beginning stories, but as the students progress, there's a lot more that you can talk about using the story grammar chart. But it's a great idea to get them started right away, at least being familiar with the different components of narrative writing. So the first thing you'll want to do is set purpose. And I usually will read the title and then set a purpose for the student. So I would say something like, we're going to read a story called Cash's Socks. Let's read to find out what happens with Cash's socks. So the students know that there's something to do with socks, and that child is thinking about it, and they're ready to have that conversation. If the title includes something that you think the child might be unfamiliar with, so there might be a word in there that they don't really know, they're unfamiliar with it, then you'll want to have a little bit of a discussion to build some background knowledge before you read the story. Now, the child is going to hear this story first, just listening. So the instructor will read it and the child just listens. The second time you're going to read it with the child, so you both read together at the same time. And the third time the child is going to read independently. And this is really going to support the fluency, because at this stage, the students are trying to do a lot at once. They're learning the code, they're applying it, they're also thinking about the vocabulary, they're thinking about what's happening in the story. So by having the instructor read it first, it lightens their cognitive load. So they're able to first understand the story. You can clean up any vocabulary. If there's some words they don't know, you could talk about it. That's where we're going to bring in our story grammar. So the first read is really about language comprehension. Do they understand the story? Then the second read becomes about having the child decode the story with the instructor. And you're going to be reading that one simultaneously, where you're each going to point. The instructor can be, I usually sit across from a child when I'm working with the student, where I point above. If I'm sitting across from them, I usually point with my finger or my pencil, and the child points below. And then we're both reading together. Cash lives next to a shop. Okay, so that's a choral read. The child and the instructor read together. And then the child reads and the instructor provides corrective feedback. So if the student is unable to decode a word, or the student says the wrong sound, the instructor can point to the sound. Maybe the child says sips instead of ships. So you can point and say, what does this say? Point to these letters. What does the SH say? Or how do we read that? Those two letters. And we can remind them. We might want to underline it to bring their attention to it. And then if the child remembers, oh yes, that's great, go ahead and read it. Ship, ships. Another trick is they can always kind of take off that suffix. The suffixes are all in bold. And that's to make it easy for the child to recognize, oh yeah, that's a suffix. I could take it off to make the word a little smaller, blend it, and then add that suffix back on. So that's just a little bit of a support for them as well. So you want to make sure you're giving them feedback and helping them get to the word. If they forget the sound, just give it to them. Maybe you get to, let's see, maybe when they get to likes, maybe they don't recall how to read that. Maybe they say licks instead. And you could just say, this is the I sound. So say I here. Like, likes, likes. Okay, so that's how that's going to look for the reading. Again, when you look at the directions, I'm going to point it out to you. It walks you through all of that. How you're going to set a purpose. You're going to read the story to the child. Then you're going to read it together with a choral read. And then you're going to listen to the student read. Okay. Then at the end, you're going to talk about any vocabulary. And when you get to the word shins, you might stop and talk about the word shins then. And I can tell you a lot of kids don't know what shins are. They know what shin guards are, but they don't actually know what shins are. And so if you ask the child to point to your shins, there's a good chance the child might not be able to do it. And so that gives you the opportunity to show them and teach them about the word shins. Okay, so we're weaving in that vocabulary as well. And then they can talk about the question here, how is the word cash being used in 2 different ways? So in the story, it says mom gives Cash some cash to get red fish socks. Well, this Cash is the kid's name, but this cash means money, and a child might not understand that. So again, we're talking about language, and this is a conversation in terms of the word shins and talking about cash and cash. You might have that discussion on the first read. So as you're reading through it the first time and you're really focusing on that comprehension piece, you can bring in the different word-wise tasks and have that conversation with the child so that by the time he or she goes to read the story, they understand it and it makes sense to them. And then they're really just focusing on decoding the words and reading. And then you can have the child discuss the think and share question with you, go back and reread it again, highlight words that have that SH spelling, and then they can draw a picture of how they visualized the socks. And then that brings in trying to promote that visualization, because we want kids to always be connecting the words with the meaning, and having them make a mental image in their head is really great practice. We want to make sure they're doing that from the get-go. So that's why there's a lot of picture drawing in the stories throughout the sequence, especially at the beginning, and then toward the end of book 1 too. The kids are doing a lot of drawing. So that's what you're going to do for reading text.